Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. We have a very special guest today, Elle de Posson. I did not take French. How was it? How was it?
It was good. It was great. I'm used to it. Don't worry.
So I'm so excited to finally have an expert on the podcast to talk about feminine and masculine energy because it has been so important to my own journey, and I feel like it just keeps popping up for me everywhere. So before we dive into all the goods we're going to get into today, can you just give a brief intro who you are and who you serve?
Yes, of course. So my name is Elle de Posson, and I am not sure if my voice is actually being recorded because I don't see the things moving down.
I see them. I think you're good.
Okay, good.
Don't worry.
I keep talking then. It's all flat on my screen. I'm like, wait a second here. So I help women really step into their power, step into their genius, step into their purpose, and then translate that into a business that is aligned with their soul and who they came here to be. And I'm really passionate in helping women do that the feminine way because we live in a society that is very masculine and we need masculine energy and we have masculine energy inside of us. The only thing is that, especially for women or feminine essence beings, and certain men, associate with feminine essence beings. So I don't want to be like too cliche here. But so for feminine essence beings, it is very important to cultivate your feminine energy and to stay in your feminine energy. Otherwise, you slowly burn out and you get out of alignment.
Yeah, and I think you actually had something in your book that I totally became obsessed with your book as I got into it. And it came to me at the perfect time. I love how that happens. I talked a lot about my ayahuasca ceremony on this podcast, but my
Mhm.
overarching intention for that trip in January was to reconnect with my feminine energy. And ayahuasca
Mhm.
is also known as Mama Aya, and it's a
Yeah,
feminine plant medicine. And then I get
grandmother.
home, and like 2 weeks after I'm home, someone recommends your book to me. And I'm like, this is all just so perfect.
Divine
And
timing.
yeah. And you mentioned somewhere about burnout actually like being hot and this being like an
Mhm.
overdoing of the masculine energy. Can you explain that?
Of course. So, if you look into traditional Chinese medicine or even Ayurveda, they both talk about feminine and masculine energy. And again, we have both energies inside of us, whether we're a man or a woman, or no sex, or, today with the genders and everything.
However you identify. Yeah, you have both.
Whatever you identify with, you have both energies inside of you. And so, masculine energy, it's all about doing. And if we look at nature, because nature is such a beautiful teacher, we can really connect the masculine energy with the sun, with the day, with warmth. Whereas feminine energy, it's all about being, receiving, and then it's connecting us with the night, the moon, and cold energy. And so if you spend your time doing, you're going to be always in that masculine energy. And that masculine energy is warm, it's hot. And when I'm saying the word energy here, it really encompasses physical energy, like really having your physical energy, but also your spiritual energy, your health. It's a lot of different things. And so when you do, you're in that warm masculine energy. And if you spend so much time and all of your days in that masculine energy, all that heat is slowly going to burn you out. So it's really funny to see that even our language knows about that. Somehow we knew that, but we just lost touch with that wisdom. And because the feminine is rising, and we can also talk about why the feminine is rising so much today, we are really invited to come back to our feminine, to that cold energy, to the night, to go more inward. And create a balance between the two because the purpose is not just to be in the feminine. We don't want to just be in the feminine, especially if you have a business. You really need that masculine energy. The purpose is to create sacred union. But you can only create sacred union if you come back to the feminine first, because everything starts with the feminine.
Mm-hmm. And could you move your microphone just down like one notch? Do you have it stacked?
I can do that.
Perfect. Perfect. My editor will help us out too. But
Yeah.
that totally makes sense and leads right into another question I had for you, which is why does it seem like there's this collective um baby stepping back towards kind of that harmony between the feminine and the masculine? Like, why is there
Mm.
this big almost calling, at least for a lot of the people I surround myself with?
Yeah. So I love to see that because indeed nobody was talking about the divine feminine 2, 3 years ago, right? And now it's everywhere. Or maybe I'm seeing it everywhere because, it's my Raz that's focusing on it.
Yeah.
But no, there really is a reason. Well, first of all, it was written in the stars. If we go and do a bit of astrology, I'm not an astrology expert, but I am curious in it. And it is known that we were in the age of Pisces, which is the masculine, ruled by Mars. And now we are in the age of Aquarius, the feminine, ruled by Venus. So we're really invited to come back to our feminine. So that's like the energies of the stars. That's the first thing. The second thing is that our society is awakening, if you will. People are waking up, they're more and more interested in the spiritual world, connecting with their soul, and not just like fitting into a box and doing life like society wants you to do it. And as you ascend and as you awaken, you are invited to heal yourself and to go and look inside. And these are all feminine qualities because feminine energy is all about going inward. Whereas masculine energy is all about going outward. And even for men, I mean, honestly, I have a lot of compassion and love for men in general because they have been taught all their life that they cannot cry, they have to be strong, they have to keep their emotions for themselves. If they're like too sensitive, they're going to be like, oh, are you a pussy or what? They're being criticized for honoring their feminine energy. And it was not even two like 100 years ago that we had 2 world wars and men had to go and fight and leave their families and their kids behind. I mean, there is no room for emotions there. And I really think that was very traumatizing for men in general. And that was just passed down from our grandfathers to our fathers to the men that we are with today. So it's like, it's not so long ago that men have pushed down their feminine so much, but they need that. They need to come back to that balance, and we need that too. We also need to allow our men to have a good cry and connect with their emotions, right? So that's really that whole invitation of coming back to the feminine because it is healing. Feminine is healing. And because when you come back to the feminine, and because everything starts with the feminine, we need to come back to the feminine to create that sacred union. Because the feminine is the leader. So I know that might surprise you because most people think about the feminine as a passive energy that is just there waiting to receive. The truth is that the feminine is the leader. She's the one that has the vision. She's the one that's connected to the soul desires. And so when you are in your feminine energy and you can connect with those soul desires, then you can you can call in the sacred masculine, the sacred warrior to take action. And if we honor our feminine again, then we can create that sacred union because every man is birthed from the womb of a mother, right? Every day starts at night when it's the feminine. Everything starts with the feminine, but we have forgotten that. And so by coming back to our feminine, we can create that sacred union, which is actually the purpose. We don't want to just be a feminine essence society. But I would say that a lot of spiritual teachers are also saying that we are moving away from patriarchy to matriarchy. We are coming back to the leading power, the nurturing power, the intuitive psychic power of the feminine. And we are invited to awaken that in every woman and man of the planet.
And so you said the feminine is the healing energy. When we come back to the sacred union and this harmony between our masculine and feminine energies, why does that cultivate less stress and less hustle and more feeling in alignment, more flow? Like what is it about that harmony that lets us be in that space of like, ah, good. I got it. I'm manifesting my desires. I feel good.
Yeah, great question. Love that question. So, will you desire something, right? You want your business to have six figure, or you want to like find the guy of your life or the house of your life. And you need a mix of intuition, of flow, and structure. And actually, for the feminine to experience flow, for the feminine to be able to move, to have space, to be creative, to be connected to her intuition, she needs the structure of the masculine. But if there is too much structure, the feminine cannot flow. And if there is no structure, the feminine cannot flow either. So it's really by being aware of that. And so in your business, that is going to look like, or in your life, that is going to look like, for example, you have a calendar with 1 or 2 appointments a day, or you block off moments a whole afternoon where you have nothing planned and you just go with what is calling you. So you create a little bit of structure in your life, the masculine, to then have space for the feminine to be intuitive, to be creative, and to play. And so it's really always finding that right balance, because when you are in that flow, when you are in that receiving state, the feminine is all about receiving. Things then come your way. You can respond to them, you can see how they make you feel. And in all that space, you can hear your intuition, you can hear your soul talking to you. So by really honoring the structure that the masculine brings, but not bringing too much structure, still allowing for all that space for the feminine to flow, you can really be in sacred union in your business and in your life and have the best of both worlds. And that is important because it leads to having a soul led life and soul led business. And the more you align with your soul, the more life becomes playful and fun and simple, because that's what life is supposed to be. Life is easy. We're the ones making it super complicated by overthinking it and wanting to achieve certain goals and being super obsessed and attached to certain outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the truth is that your soul knows where she's going. Your soul knows where she's guiding you. But you need to be open to receive her and let her guide you as well.
And most of us just book up every second of our lives, right?
Yes.
I know even you suggesting have your afternoon free and see what comes up. And like I mentioned, I've been reading your book. I've been really taking my time with it because there are so many exercises in there.
Yeah.
And I did recently read your chapter on surrender, and you recommended even having a whole intuitive day where you
Mhm.
plan nothing for a whole day and just kind of see what comes up, see what feels good. And I tried it last week. I ended up scheduling some things. It was not perfect, but I tried. I'm getting there. But it is scary. Some of those suggestions that you make, even taking them in, I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. I know that would help me, but I think you call yourself a recovering control freak.
Oh,
I
yes.
I would say I'm a control freak in recovery. Like, I don't think I'm recovered yet.
Yeah.
And I think this comes up a lot for our audience today, thinking of in terms of food and fitness and wellness. It can be really scary to take your foot off the gas and to fear what might happen, especially with our bodies. Like, will I gain weight? Will I um, never be able to stop eating? That's one story I used to tell myself. So my question is, like, how do we start to make peace with this uncertainty that comes up when we are trying to practice allowing more of that feminine energy flow?
Mm. Um, I love that you're bringing that up, especially with the field that you're working in, because I had my own journey with really being a huge control freak in what I was eating. So I was always, like I have a morphology that is quite curvy. I'm very sensual, very feminine, and I believe that that was bad. That I was like too chubby or too round, because in Europe we really have an obsession of being very thin, and my parents were pretty thin. But I just have another, corpulence. My body is just different because that's the body that my soul chose, and now I can see why. And so for a very long time, I was maybe slightly overweight. And then my parents divorced and I put on like 10 kilos. So that's like 25 pounds in 3 months. And I was having all these eating disorders. And then it took me years to lose it. And those years actually really made me being super controlling, because I was counting the calories, being like really careful of what I was eating, running like 30 to 45 minutes every day, like having my Fitbit, like I was controlling everything that I was doing. And I felt safe doing that. The truth is that it was a real torture. I was making things really hard for myself because it really became an obsession. Um, and I realized that I was obviously eating my emotions. And so the day I started actually more surrendering to what I was feeling rather than being controlling and then hoping that I would lose the 100 grams and then go have a look on the scale the next day. And of course, it didn't work because that's not how your body works. um, the day I really started surrendering, listening to my emotions, allowing myself to be, and really move from a place of I take care of my body instead of I am hard with my body and I am forcing it to lose weight, is really the day that everything changed. And so I have now a relationship with food that is like completely different, in the sense that some days I'm going to be craving chocolate or eating something that is not the most healthy. And I know it, but I just surrender to it. I just allow it. I'm not trying to control it. Because in the end, we are souls that came here to experience. And if your soul suddenly is craving to eat lots of chocolate, just eat the chocolate. And if you want to do that the next day, do that the next day. And I promise you, after some days, you're going to stop eating all the chocolate, because you're going to be like, wait a minute. I can have as much chocolate as I want, and as much peanut butter as I want, and as much ice cream as I want. At first, you're going to jump on it because you have been controlling yourself so much. You haven't allowed yourself. And what we resist persists. But when you give yourself permission to just eat whatever you want, whenever you want, maybe have ice cream for breakfast and then bacon for lunch and then cookies for dinner, whatever, suddenly you're going to actually, what this is going to do is that it's going to help you connect more with your body and the cravings of your body. And then, yeah, maybe at first you're going to want to eat lots of like sweet and fat things. But then, because you're going to have created that connection with your body, at some point you're going to be like, wait a minute, maybe I'm craving a green juice right now. And so that's really how I started healing my control freakness attitude in food, by really just allowing myself to eat whatever I wanted, and be very aware that sometimes I just had to have a good cry instead of eating, to allow the emotions to come through me and to really just reinforce that connection with my body.
And can
Yeah.
I ask you a question on that?
Hmm.
Why does, like, I totally understand what you are saying, and that was kind of my journey as well, except I baby stepped it over time, which I call, kind of finding that gray area between the black and white diet rules. But
Hmm.
why then does it still feel like when that fear creeps in, like let's say you hop on the scale one day and your weight is up and you're like, oh my God, I shouldn't be listening to my body. And that fear response tells us to reach for control again. Where does that come from? Like that, okay, I'm getting into my feminine, I'm trusting, just keep trusting, but then we kind of divert back. We want to reach towards our comfort zone. Why is that another desire for control? Like why is that so much easier to lean into?
Because control is your comfort zone.
And does that go into the feminine wounds? Is that why we kind of have that?
Yes, it's part of that, but it's mostly connected to your ego.
Okay.
So our egos, they love to control. That's what makes them feel safe, especially if you have a control wound. So in the path of femininity, I talk about the three feminine wounds who are keeping you in the wounded energy, and that is more wounds that you're in when you're negating yourself. So you're going to say yes when you mean no, or you're not going to speak your truth, but they're really connected to your feminine power and really stepping into who you are. But I also teach about the five wounds of the soul that I wrote about in my first book, The Self Healing Spiral. And these are wounds that you came with. So I love to use the image of like a little cloud, a little soul that came down with a backpack. And in your backpack, you have wounds, but you also have gifts and strengths. And these gifts and strengths are there to help you for your purpose, but also for the healing of these wounds. And these wounds, you have them from day one. But they're only going to start showing up around the age of 2 or 3 when the ego is starting to form. And the purpose of these wounds, deep down, it's actually to teach us about self love and about love and unconditional love. Because I believe that's one of the main reasons of why we came on this beautiful planet is to learn to love ourselves, discover ourselves, because we can only love others at the same depth that we love ourselves. So it's really all about looking inside. And one of these five wounds is actually the betrayal wound. So when I know we will, because I have it. And the way you're going to cope with these wounds is that you're going to start carrying a mask. Because your ego believes that facing these wounds is so painful that it is easier to find a coping mechanism to go through life. The truth is that when you're having that coping mechanism, when you're controlling, you're not really being yourself. You're just protecting yourself from something that you think is painful. And so these five wounds are rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. And when you have that betrayal wound, you're going to carry the mask of control because your ego really thinks that if you don't control, then you're weak. If you don't control, then you're going to be hurt again. If you don't control, you're not safe. So you're going to control what you eat, but also the people around you, what they say, how they behave, how things happen. And when you have that wound, like you love to plan everything. And you're a person like you're everything about commitment. You need to
Mm-hmm.
keep your commitments. And if people don't keep their commitments to you, like they say, oh, I'm going to call you tomorrow, and then they don't do it, it's going to drive you crazy.
Oh my God, this is so me.
Yeah. So that's a betrayal wound. And that's the
Mhm.
wound that your soul has chosen to learn about self love. Because deep down, it is through loving yourself that you can slowly heal that wound. And so, you know how we only learn with challenges and obstacles? Otherwise, if we're comfortable and happy, we don't really learn. And so, our soul has chosen 1 or 2 of these wounds to really teach us about love.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's those challenges that present the greatest learning opportunities, and that speaks to me a
Absolutely.
lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, because these wounds are activated in your childhood. And the betrayal wound is really connected to the parent of the opposite sex. So for me, for example, it was my father. So for you as well. But if there are some men that are listening to us, it's probably their mother. And so, for example, I'm sure that my father said to me one day, oh, we're going to go to the fresh market on Sunday, and then we'll get you these waffles that you love so much. And then it's Sunday morning, and I'm all excited to go to the supermarket, to the fresh market with my father. And then he runs off the house in his car. And then I'm like, where did he go? Like, we were supposed to go together. And my mom says, oh, well, he was supposed to meet up with some friends. He completely forgot and he's late. You know your father. He's never really organized. So he had to run off because they were already meeting and they called him. And so you're there as a 5, 6, 7, or 8 year old. And you're like, oh, my father let me down. That's because I'm not trustworthy or I'm not lovable. When you're that age, when you're a child, the only way for you to make sense about life is to bring everything back to yourself. And very easily, you think it's your fault. And you're like, if my dad did that, it's because I'm not lovable or I'm not trustworthy. And so you stop loving yourself and you stop trusting yourself. That's why it is through learning to trust yourself and to love yourself again that you actually heal these wounds. So, the purpose of these wounds is to teach us about love and trust.
And that's, I think, a really important note on how long we carry some of these beliefs and some of these stories and how deep some of them are rooted. You
Oh,
know, a
yeah.
lot of times we're often served or given very like band-aid surface level solutions, like definitely in the fitness and nutrition world, but in a lot of areas of life. And you know, I've seen people, especially with diets, like get frustrated, and then they reach out to me and it's like, well, everything was very surface level. Like, have you ever thought about when in your life did your relationship with food start changing? And, you know, some people
Hmm.
tell me 8 years old or even younger or 12 years old or 13 years old. And those are some really deep roots that take time and honesty and that surrendering to really uncover and then begin that healing process.
Oh, yeah. It's a journey inward. I'm going to have to grab my charger because otherwise my laptop's going to die. So, give
Okay.
me a sec. Oh, God. Why am I making things complicated for myself? So, I have the cable, but I don't know how to connect it. Ah, here it is. All right.
Perfect.
We're good now.
Digging back.
Thank
Okay.
you for your patience.
Yeah. And so with these wounds that a lot of us carry, especially from a very young age, what are some of these practical steps of moving towards healing, rebuilding self-love, self-trust?
Hmm. So, really, the first step is awareness, as always. So, it's being aware of what are these wounds and how do they manifest in my life. So, it's knowing that with every wound, you carry a mask. So, if you have the rejection wound, you're going to have the mask of the dependent. You're going to be someone that No, sorry, that's the abandonment wound. If they have the rejection wound, you're going to have the mask of the person that is running away from things. Usually have a lack of self-worth. You're going to be smiling, but keeping things inside of you. And when there's a conflict, you're not going to speak your truth. You're going to actually try to run away from the conversation or the situation. You know, it's these people in relationships that when it becomes hard, they run away because they don't want to face the conflict. When you have an abandonment wound, you are dependent because this is how you feel loved by others. It's actually by receiving help and having them support you. When you have a humiliation wound, you're going to have the mask of the masochist. So you're going to be really hard on yourself. You're always going to be super, super busy to always help others. And whenever something feels wrong, you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel like it's your fault. The mask of betrayal, treason, you have the control mask. And then the wound of injustice, you're going to be rigid. You're going to be a perfectionist. Things have to be a certain way, otherwise, it doesn't work. You're going to be very strict and quite cold, and it's hard for you to speak about emotions. So that's like a very quick description of the 5 wounds and the 5 masks. But by being aware of, maybe when I was explaining this, you were like, oh, I can be like that. And I can be like that too. So we always have one main wound and then another one or two. And by being aware of how they manifest in your life, you can catch yourself. You can be like, oh, wait, I'm running away from a conflict again because I'm actually so scared that if I get in the conflict, I'm going to be rejected again. So it's by taking yourself by the hand, reassuring yourself, and taking a moment to be like, okay, I really want to put on that behavior again, but that mask, but it's not really you, it's a mask. It's a behavior that you have put on to protect yourself. And really reassuring yourself that you are loved, you are safe, and daring to do it anyway, even if you're afraid, and then see where it brings you. I think that would really be the first step, is to, even if you're afraid of the conflict or you believe you cannot do things on your own, or you think that if you don't control it's going to be a mess, it's to try to do things differently. It's to take a moment to go inside, put your hand on your heart and really ask yourself, how would I do it if I knew I was safe and loved? If I could do everything I wanted, what would I do? What would I say? What choice would I make? And then trying. And then, of course, for every single wound, there are like specific exercises that you can do. But yeah, that's a whole like coaching thing
Right.
and
Right. Yeah.
healing thing. Yeah.
And I know with food, and speaking of control, one thing that comes to my mind is we're confronted with this choice multiple times a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of eating.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe exercising once a day or multiple times a day if you're moving in different ways. And just a reminder for anyone listening who's like, how am I supposed to do that like all day, every day? Is it can start so small, right? It
Yeah.
can start with, just like you said, putting your hand on your heart and taking a deep breath around meal times, and maybe just around one meal to start, and just
Yeah.
asking yourself, like, what sounds really good to my body in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you still want to track your food for right now, but add that one thing that sounded really good to your body when you took that moment.
Something that really helped me on my healing of eating disorders journey was, again, to really move from that place of love. And the day I decided that I was going to eat healthy out of love for myself, rather because I have to and I want to lose the weight, is the day that things shifted completely. I stopped like going on the scale, but slowly I was just losing the weight and
Mm-hmm.
shedding off the extra pound. And sometimes, I mean, not anymore, but when I would have these cravings come back, or I would feel insecure and I would just have that old reflex of like going towards food, I would do that, put my hand on my heart, and I would tell myself, I love myself too much for this. And maybe loving myself right now is just giving myself permission to have an extra piece of chocolate. And maybe loving myself is actually going for a bath instead, or going for a walk, or having a tea, or actually going to see the emotion that is so uncomfortable that I want to eat. Like, what is happening inside of me? Because like our food is so connected to our emotions. We're looking for something inside of ourselves and we can't really find it, so we're just like eating it. Or we don't want to feel what's happening, so we're suppressing it with food. So whether we're seeking something or don't want to feel something, like food is so easy to go to. And I think that's why, we can blame the food industry for putting lots of sugar in our food. For sure, they are responsible of like the excess of overweight in today's society. But I think it's also that we have completely lost touch with how to deal with ourselves, with our emotions, with our mind, with our worries. We're disconnected from ourselves and we're
Mhm.
craving that satisfaction and that connection in food.
Yeah, and I think my personal practice with coming back to my feminine energy has really been a missing piece that I didn't quite know that I needed to help bring me back to my body. Because you can
Mm-hmm.
talk all day about like these these steps to follow, but then again that's kind of more in the masculine, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
follow this system to eat intuitively. when
It's
when
true.
that kind of ignores your intuition.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, intuition and surrender are other topics I really wanted to talk to you about. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in this theme of coming back to your body and really reconnecting the mind and body and soul versus living a lot in your logical mind, which I think is very masculine energy. So how does that practice of surrender and or the practice of tuning back into your intuition help you come back into your body?
Well, because your body is your intuition.
Mm.
Your body is your it's your soul. We say body, mind, and soul, but really your body is the expression of your soul. And so coming back to your body is coming back to your intuition. And coming back to your intuition is coming back to your body. They're intertwined. They're the same. And as you beautifully said, the mind is the masculine and the feminine is the body. And so, in order to make peace with your body, you do need to come back to the feminine and see that the feminine and your body have so much wisdom to offer you. I mean, I had a baby a few months ago. He's 9 months old now. And I'm still blown away at how my body managed to create a baby. It's mind blowing. It's so perfect, so complex. Like if I wanted to make a baby with my mind, rational mind right now, well, I wouldn't survive more than a second. I don't know how to do it. And so our bodies are so wise. They have so much wisdom. And coming back to honoring them, listening to them, allowing the emotions to move through them, allowing the desires to be expressed, following the nudges. Um, it's so beautiful, and you start living completely differently.
Yeah, that is something I'm definitely still practicing. But I
Mm.
know on days, because some days for me, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. It feels very quiet. Like my intuition feels very quiet, and then my mind
Mhm.
immediately wants to fill that space with doing often. Like, oh, take a deep breath. Okay, nothing's coming to me, so I'm going to dive into that project that I need to get to. And I'm like taken out of it so quickly.
Yeah.
Um, do you recommend really practicing slowing down even more?
So your body has its own consciousness. You have your consciousness, your soul, and then your body on its own has its own consciousness. And so it's like saying to a friend, I haven't talked to you for years, but now just tell me everything, I'm ready. Well, I don't think your friend is going to be like, okay, I'm going to tell you my deepest secrets now. It's a relationship. And so sometimes we sit in silence and we don't hear anything. And, I still have that sometimes because I'm not ready to receive, or I have expectations. My mind is still getting in the way, or I'm not grounded enough. And it's really by, you know, the thing that I would advise you to do is like when you go to bed in the evening, lay down on your back. I mean, usually that's how we sleep, anyways, or on bed if you want, but just like relax and connect with your foot. Hey, right foot, how are you? And you're not going to feel anything. But then go up to your ankle. Hey, right ankle, it's been a while since I talked to you. Remember a few weeks ago, a few months ago, when I sprained you and it was painful and we couldn't walk? How are you doing now? You're not going to hear anything back, but that doesn't matter. Keep going. How are you, calf? How are you, knee? And just go through your whole body and like that. And do that again the next day and again the next day. And after a few days, when you say, hey, foot, you're going to start feeling some tingling in your feet. Your body's responding. You're building the relationship. And then you send your feet love. Where your focus goes, energy flows. And your foot can feel that love and that energy. And so you build that trust, you build that relationship. And at some point your body is going to be like, okay, now we want to sleep. Now we want to eat. Now we want to have chocolate. Now we want to have a green juice. And you're going to increase that intuition and that connection for what you're eating, for the food, but also for everything else in your life, for the decisions that you have to make. It's just that it's easier to start. I mean, easier. Sometimes it's hard to do it with food, but it's easier to start with food than with, life-changing situations of like, do I go on this date, or do I sign up for this group program, or do I launch this business, which are, pretty big decisions. And when you want to try to rely on your intuition and on what your body is telling you, but you haven't created that connection and that relationship first, then you're not always able to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes we hear certain things, and we give it meaning. So what I see a lot with my clients is that when they start their spiritual journey and we start to do meditations and tuning in with the body, and they start to see certain things and receive images, they're like, oh, I saw this. What does it mean? I'm like, wait, get out of your head again. Go back in your body. Just let the image unfold. Because sometimes you're going to see different things, and if you're letting it unfold without attaching meaning to it, at the end, you're going to understand the message. And also, your soul is speaking to you in a way that usually only you can understand. So again, we're going to see things, but we're going to seek validation outside of ourselves and ask to a spiritual teacher or someone like, what does it mean if I see this in my dreams or in my visions or in the day? Well, it's your spirit guides and it's your soul that sent you this image because you're the only one that can decipher it. So again, it's really by going inwards. And when you have the right answer, usually you feel it in your body. You have that sense of alignment and like it's right and
And I like how you mentioned nudges earlier too, because I think, sometimes if I'm really focusing on bringing my intuition into this one area to make a decision, for example, and I'm like, oh, nothing's coming up. But then I forget about or like gloss over all these other signs and feelings and full body yeses I've got from my body on
Mhm.
other things. So I think also remembering like, if you're really focused on one area, maybe just like let that go for now. Try to surrender it to your guides and remember all of the areas where you have been led in the right
Mhm.
area, even if it was just a little nudge. Mm-hmm.
So your intuition is always going to talk to you in one main way. So we have like three intuitive channels, if I can say it that way. So one is going to be your body, or you're going to hear, or you're going to see certain things. And I feel that most women are very kinesthetic. It's very much in their body. But as you grow and develop on your spiritual journey, quite often you're going to start hearing and seeing things as well. And so by being aware what your main channel is and how that voice is talking to you, you can then like it's much easier for you to start interpreting it. Because quite often, for example, we expect that intuition to talk to us in our head in a different voice. But it's your voice, it's your intuition. So it's you. The thing is that when your intuition is talking to you and you can hear it, it's talking to you in a completely different way. The energy is completely different. Because your ego is that part of yourself that has a purpose to keep you safe. Like, really, the only thing that the ego is focused on is keeping you safe. So, that safety can mean staying where you are, even if that's uncomfortable. You know how to deal with it. So, your ego wants you to stay there. Whereas your soul, her only purpose is to make you expand, AKA, get out of the comfort zone. So, be in the fear, basically. But your ego doesn't want that. So, they're always going to fight until you actually give your ego another role and your ego understands that it's safe already. But I mean, yeah, that's like we can go on a whole journey
Yeah.
to do that. But so because your ego's purpose is really to keep you safe and is very fear based, um, your ego is always going to talk to you in a way that is very determined, very assertive, a little bit aggressive. I mean, in my book, I think you've read that chapter as well. I really describe the ego as that little guardian. And I always think about, I like to make it playful and fun. So I always think about the ego as, the little guardian that's protecting the Queen of England and that has like a very strict outfit with like a weapon and a big hat. And it's with that red and colorful outfit, it's fun. um, Imagine someone that is dressed like that talking to you. It's going to be pretty assertive, and then it's going to say, "You're stupid. You're crazy." Da, 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 da. It's always going to talk in you. But your soul, your intuition, is going to talk to you in a way that is completely different because it's never going to force you to do anything. It's never going to push you to do anything. It's going to suggest. So it's going to say, "Shall I do this?" It's also going to talk in I because it's you. "Shall I do this? Should I turn right when I'm driving? Should I click on this video on YouTube? Should I read this book? Should I follow this person on Instagram?" And then who knows where it leads. Your soul is always going to tell you to do something in the moment, whereas your ego is very focused on the present or the past. And so they have a language that is completely different. And again, by understanding how they express each other and how they talk to you, you can then way like more easily see, okay, this is my ego talking to me, this is my soul talking to me, I'm going to give it a try. Like, it's happened so many times to me that I was in really shitty situations. Like, one day I was in Montreal and I had to move flats and the Airbnb didn't confirm, and then the guy just wasn't responding, and I was basically with my two big luggages on the street, and it was 6 p.m. and I didn't know where to go and sleep. And then I went on my laptop and I heard the fear of my ego being like, maybe I should go back to the old flat, or maybe I should call this person, and, doing all things that were pretty safe. And then I kept having these ideas of, well, what if I did that? And what if I messaged that person because I really like that flat? Apparently, it's not available on Airbnb, but maybe it's because it's 6 p.m. already and they don't want people to come last minute. And so I kept following the what if I did that? And I ended up in an amazing flat, and 2 hours later, and I was really happy. So by knowing that your soul talks to you with these suggestions that don't make a lot of sense in the moment, but that are very like in the moment, and it's what if I did that? It's always a suggestion, and it's very airy, like a whisper in the wind. It's never going to insist. Then you can start following these little messages that you hear and that you feel. You feel it in your body as well. But if you're too like busy thinking and worrying and overanalyzing everything, there's no space for you to receive these nudges and these messages.
I really like that explanation and the whisper on the wind. I think that's more helpful to visualize and kind of notice what that might feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And I get asked about confidence a lot, or I hear women saying, I want to do X, Y, and Z because then I'll be confident. And one thing that I have noticed is learning to rely on my intuition more, like continuing to practice slowing down and tuning in, honoring whatever my body is asking for, doing these little things that are bringing me back to my feminine energy.
Absolutely.
I'm just naturally more confident because
Absolutely.
what is confidence if not like radical self-trust? And that really is what coming back to your feminine energy, I feel like, starts to build in oneself.
Absolutely. Confidence comes from the embodiment of your divine feminine, but you already knew that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so beautiful and so much to reflect on in this episode. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for all of your wisdom and your guidance and your stories. I love your stories. And before I let you go, where can people find you? Where can they learn more about how to work with you or also get your book for sure?
Sure. Well, thank you, Caroline, for inviting me as a guest on your podcast to start with. And then you can find me on Instagram. Of course, I think that's the best way to connect with me. My account is at Ele de Posson, ELEDEPOSSON. Otherwise, I have a website and I have a fun quiz on my website as well for you to see which gifts of the feminine you already have activated and which need a little bit more love. And I work with people one on one or in group programs.
Beautiful. And you also have a really great podcast. I don't want people
Yeah,
to
I
miss
have a
that.
podcast that is called the Sacred Roots podcast that is about all things spiritual with a bridge with like business and really how to have a soul-led business in life.
Yes, I listened to a chunk of your episodes when I was reading your book,
Mm,
and they were great too. Even more stories, which I just loved.
yeah, I love to share stories. And then
Yeah.
I realized in my human design that I was a storyteller. So I was like, oh, well, I
Oh,
guess I'm going to do more of that.
perfect. Yes, and I'll be sure to link your book in the show notes as well so people can
Yeah.
pick that up. And thank you again for being here and everyone listening. If you really liked this podcast, if something stood out to you, definitely share it to your story and leave a review so I know what kind of episodes you are enjoying these days. And thanks for listening today.